thank you for joining us today for this episode of the Law of Relevancy podcast. I'm Cord Zoen, and today we're meeting with Jarrett Preston. He's the CEO of Idoneus. This business is something that you've probably never heard of before, and we're super pumped to talk to him. It is definitely an innovation that is probably going to be a big part of our future. Jarrett, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So let's talk a little bit about what you're doing with Idoneus. Give us the elevator speech.
Sure. Idoneus is a luxury marketplace, right? We're a blockchain focused platform, but really we're just simply a new modern era asset trading platform utilizing new technology and new currency as a way to help free up equity and asset value around the world for high net worth individuals.
And I mean, since the very first market, we've always traded assets, whether it was cowrie beads or shells or chicken eggs or whatever. But now you're doing it differently, though.
Sure. I mean, asset trading, people say cash is king, but I think that that's only the case when you don't have any. Right? Our clients are very high net worth, wealthy individuals, family offices, institutions. So as back in the day when Marco Polo began asset trading, these families are still trading assets all the time. They don't need cash liquidity. They want to be able to move value. So we've simply added blockchain technology and digital currency as a mechanism to make the process more efficient, more transparent, more secure, and much quicker. Historically, asset trades were done direct trades, right? Whether that was rice trading for art or that was back in the day, or diamonds trading for land or whatever it might be. We did direct trading for 18 years with Obsidian. Now, instead of a direct trade, you can move into a globally deployable currency that has many other benefits and have the ability to move in and out of assets at will. And
so what might motivate somebody to move an asset that way? Is it tax efficiency? Is it the speed of the transaction?
No, not so much tax efficiency. The tax is really the same across the board, right? Okay. Whether they're directly trading or trading for cash or trading for other currency, but more so the speed of the transaction and the view into the transaction. For example, every party that works with Idoneus is fully KYC, AML checked, 3 tiers by one of the top firms in Switzerland. We're a Swiss-based company. So people have a very strong level of trust in transacting with participants that are already vetted through Idoneus. So that's a nice part of it, and that speeds up the process. But I'd say speed and transparency and comfort of the parties involved are the biggest reasons.
So to paint the picture for us, what does a transaction look like?
Well, we do have people that trade say they have a high-value villa in the Caribbean. They built it 10 years ago. Their life has changed. Geographically, they're in different places. The kids have grown up. Maybe they remarried, whatever it might be.
So they're spending more time in California now than the Caribbean.
Now they have a villa in the Caribbean.
Now they need the villa in Tahiti.
Right, or more often now they want to bring things back to the mainland or bring things back to the U.S. Okay. Or they want to go back to London and have an apartment in London where they spend most of their time now, or they don't want to be so heavy on real estate. They want to move into diamonds. They want to move into fine art. They want to move into a mobile asset, if you will. Mm-hmm. So in that case, historically, they would come to us. We'd facilitate a direct trade. Now with Idoneus, they can trade into a globally deployable currency, IDON, if they qualify as a high net worth individual and go through our process, the vetting process. And then they have the ability then to move in and out of that currency at different value ranges. They don't need to trade for one $10 million asset, right, from one they already had. They can move from one asset into many other assets, or they can move and hold a digital currency and trade for other digital currency.
Right. So traditionally, without this model, we would have to use money.
There's basically 3 options they have before Idoneus, right? They can hold their asset. If they want to sell it, they can hold it and rent it. They can leverage it if they can, so they can leverage it.
And that's
take
pretty
some
common.
Of the cash out.
Like
it's
people who own jets are a lot of times putting them into fleet management programs and things like that.
And jets are a bit different because jets are more of a utility asset, right? People think of them as a luxury asset. People
so maybe
don't have
a yacht?
Jets. A yacht, definitely, right?
Okay.
A yacht could be, you can leverage it, and then you better charter it, right, to create revenue.
It's like that show Below Deck.
Sure, that's what they're doing, right? They're marketing and covering some of their costs. But historically, if you want to sell an asset, you either lower the price to the price the market will respond to, you leverage it and hold it and create a new strategy, right? Or you could possibly do a private trade, a direct trade, which is what we did for many years. But those direct trades are very hard to do, right? To find someone who wants your asset and you want their asset. So now with IDON, with Idoneus, we have the ability, they don't need to wait 3, 4, 5, sometimes 10 years. I have clients that waited a decade to sell a private island in the South Pacific, a decade to sell a 15,000, 20,000 square foot estate in the Caribbean.
You can't do that too much. You run out of time.
I mean, really, right? And time is the most valuable asset to these people.
That's right.
That's the thing to remember, right? It's not, they realize that money is not real. Money is just simply a pathway to real assets. And our clients understand that. So time is the real value that we give to them by being able to allow them to move quickly. They can come to Idoneus corporately. If the asset fits our profile for our corporate portfolio, we'll at times acquire the asset directly. They're out of the asset. They're out of the holding costs. They're out of the management oversight. They have no more employees. They have no more insurance. They don't have to worry about a hurricane coming to blow their villa away.
So they've basically liquidated it.
They trade it for IDON currency, right?
I got you.
If it fits the Idoneus corporate portfolio. That's a very small percentage of the time. If we think it's something that's desirable to the rest of the token holders worldwide, then we would bring it onboard it and make it available for other IDON holders around the world to purchase. And that's really the basis of the model, right? A luxury marketplace. An Amazon, if you will, of luxury, or an eBay, if you will, of luxury assets, goods and services, specifically focused on those individuals.
And the transaction is done via this proprietary cryptocurrency based off of the Ethereum?
We have a native token that we transact on the Ethereum blockchain. So we use the blockchain to move the tokens. We're really just an asset trading firm that utilizes the blockchain technology. The cryptocurrency is a very small part of what we do. It helps us move value. We're not that speculative cryptocurrency craze you're hearing and reading about. We use the technology to help move value. So they trade for IDON. IDON can then be traded for many other assets, goods, and services, real estate, aircraft, as you mentioned, yachts, art, diamonds, other land, or they can wait. And as we build out this economy together, we all have the potential to benefit, because like every currency, there are a lot of factors involved, but the more assets that come in, the more participants that come in, the more benefit, the more value the entire ecosystem has.
And you wouldn't want to use regular cash because of some reason?
No, I mean, these clients are open to receiving cash, but it may be that the traditional cash market doesn't offer them an immediate transaction, right?
Okay.
So it's much slower. If you're sitting on that island in Fiji, you can wait a decade to receive that offer. Even if you have full appraisal value and you're 10% below value, you can wait a long time for the traditional market to come.
Well, let's talk about your marketplace for a second. Yeah. How many assets do you have listed in your marketplace right now?
Over 1,000 today.
Mercy. And I would imagine the net worth of those 1,000 assets is in the billions.
Well, there's definitely there's a little smaller assets too, right? There's individual diamonds, there's individual paintings. They aren't all multi-million-dollar assets, and we want that. We want utility at all price points. But there's over $1 billion in assets today in the portfolio, and it's growing every single day. And so the more that come in, the more options we have for our token holders, and that's our sole focus right now, is the utility for the IDON holders, right? The currency is only worth what you can do with it. Right, the only reason the U.S. dollar is worth something is because you can take it down and spend it on this beautiful place here, or
any currency.
Any currency.
Right.
So unlike many other cryptocurrencies, Idoneus's focus has been specifically on the utility, the actual real-world utility for the token.
In this marketplace.
First. Correct.
All right, so how does one get into this type of a lifestyle? Tell us about your background.
Yeah, well, that's a long story. We'll make it short, though. I think... my background, I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, far from this lifestyle. I grew up in a town of 3,000 people, and I moved away when I was 15 to go to the Marine Military Academy, which is one of the top preparatory schools in the country, and graduated from there with an opportunity to go to West Point and University of Texas and Virginia Military Institute. I chose VMI, and in the Marine Corp, and from there, established some of those things I still operate with today, just principally, but I got the opportunity to start a company at a very young age, 21 years old, a marketing company in Atlanta with a partner who was older than I was, but needed some assistance on the ground. And we were very fortunate. I think we started the company with about $100 in a credit card.
And this is the asset trading
No,
company?
this was a marketing magazine company I started at 21 that I sold to one of the biggest Remax franchises in the world 11 months later, which gave me the time then to think about what I wanted to do.
Can we dig into that for a second?
Sure.
Tell us what you did.
That first?
Yeah. What did you sell?
So I started a company called Homes of the South magazine, and it was the first kind of highly organized geographical real estate publication, community publication. So it was organized by county, town, and price before any other magazines were that way. There were no websites for these magazines back then, And we launched that with a website, very organized. We had statewide distribution and a very high level of quality. And we had a lot of competitors already in the business, but we went out with a new concept where people had not had that kind of organization where they could find properties very quickly.
And qualification, like you were saying, it's a certain type of home. It's not every home.
Right. Right. Qualification, every type of home and very qualified geographically, so people knew that what they were looking at was what they might actually want to buy, right? Instead of, I don't know if you can remember,
There's
20 years ago.
There's a ton of value in that.
There was back then. Yeah. Because there was no organized website technology that people could search with right now with such tight criteria. It didn't exist.
Right.
So we created that in that market. We attracted the interest of the biggest RE/MAX franchise owner in the world who came in and bought us out and gave us some time to then think about, hey, what am I going to do next? And that's how we arrived here,
Well, so before you were in Idoneum, you were at another organization, Obsidian.
Right, before Idoneus, there was Obsidian International, and that's what started just after I sold that first magazine. I had an opportunity to meet a gentleman in the yachting space, and he quickly let me know that he would be willing to trade a boat for some real estate. And we had some real estate, and I thought, well, this is interesting. So you mean I could give you the real estate that I had acquired on another trade for this boat instead of writing you a check for the boat, right? So we did that first transaction, and I thought, I wonder how many other people in the world have things that they either acquired, they inherited, they rezoned, they re-entitled, they've owned it for a long time, the value's changed, and they don't need cash, they just want something else. And I just started playing around with it. 30 days later, I had probably 50 asset owners that had something. Maybe they had a cabin, or they had a catamaran yacht, or they had a boutique hotel, or an apartment on the beach in Florida. And I had them pinned up all over my wall there. I was 22, almost 23 years old. And I started matching these people with what they wanted. And we formed this company, then Obsidian International, and went from there and built a business that did transactions in 38 countries over 18 years. And everything from underground coal reserves to very rare fine art to super yachts, private islands, boutique hotels, villas, et cetera. 65% real estate, and the other were many other asset classes that we've mentioned. And then it was that until 2017, early 18, when blockchain technology really began to take shape in the market.
How early did you see that this was going to be the way that you were going to?
I would love to say I saw it early, but I was actually quite against it. I had multiple people come to me with this idea of creating a crypto-focused asset trading platform. And, I'm very conservative by nature. I had zero interest in anything to do with cryptocurrency. If you told me I was going to be the CEO of a Swiss cryptocurrency company, I would have laughed hysterically 6 years ago.
I mean, personally, it took me about a year to even figure out why it had value.
No, me too. And so we had discussions with 3 different groups that approached us at Obsidian to create an asset-centric model where we would bring our experience and network on the asset trading side, and they would bring their regulatory, blockchain, and crypto experience. And we finally put the right group together. And, we went to the right jurisdiction, Switzerland has the highest regulation in the world for blockchain technology and cryptocurrency. Also, it creates a lot of trust being in Switzerland just for high net worth individuals. Sure. There's confidence in that market.
And blockchain itself is trustworthy.
That's right. I mean, it's an immutable database, right? It creates an economy of trust. And that's the thing that's a little hard for a lot of traditional business people to understand. We're used to everything we do is to create trust. Every podcast you do is to create trust, right?
Absolutely,
every marketing effort we take is to create trust. When you operate a business 100% through blockchain, trust isn't even needed any longer.
It's guaranteed.
Because it's there.
Yeah.
Right? So human error is taken out, fraud is taken out. All these small mistakes that happen in the title industry, that happen in all these high value real estate transactions and yacht transactions, aircraft transactions, diamond trading, all of it. Blockchain technology massively mitigates those errors and those potential frauds and issues that caused by the human hand. At the same time, people are still motivated by other human beings, right? So there's still a high human touch at Idoneus, but we rely on the technology to help us make the transaction safer and more transparent.
Yeah, you just use it as a transaction mechanism. Mm-hmm. And all of that assurance, not insurance, assurance is built in.
Yeah, it's exciting, because as people begin to participate in the new economy of money, it's an entirely new world for a lot of these people. Our average client is 55 to 65 years old. It's not a 22-year-old as in many cryptocurrencies. So these are very traditional business people.
Right.
But they understand, they've been around long enough to see that markets shift, world shift, and they're definitely taking
they're smart people.
Very smart.
Right.
Very smart people. That's who we engage with every day. So it's a lot of fun.
Tell us about, are there any memorable transactions that you've dealt with that you just, I mean, I'm sure you've seen just hundreds of things that are just mind-boggling to the average person, but are there any that stand out?
I was involved in a transaction with a palace in Italy that it kind of blew my mind when I was there. I was standing there with the owner, and he was explaining how the furnishings in the living room were provided as a gift from Princess Romanov. And going back through the history of those kind of assets, I love real estate. I love very special, unique things. So to be a part of that, to hold a Van Gogh painting in your hand that nobody's held in 50 years, nobody's seen in the public, pretty special moments. I think things like that, when they pull something out that has not been seen. I was in Miami actually looking at a Picasso recently that we were looking at a transaction with, and just the whole approach, right? How they brought the Picasso out, how they displayed it, the history of it, and just knowing this had not been on the market in 60 years. And the chance to bring things like that to market is always exciting to me. But I mean, there's been so many things. I would say probably the most exciting for me are the historical assets.
Yeah.
That the assets that cannot be replaced. How do you set the value on a property that was designed by Michelangelo in the 15th century and built for one of the most famous families in the history of Europe as a personal home, and now is positively cash flowing and overlooking some of the most incredible. How do you price that? Right? Value is so personal, and I love that because the conversation around value is what we talk about every day. We're really experts at moving value, exchanging value, establishing value. It's my favorite part. The historical assets, they're priceless.
How do you go about verifying the authenticity of the assets themselves? So you mentioned you verify the people to make sure that they are vetted and things like that. How do you do the assets?
So obviously every asset class is very different, but I mean, the real estate is pretty simple, as you can imagine. It's no different than a traditional real estate market. We look at the history of ownership, the history of title, all those things. So every transaction in real estate is done in the same manner. It's just a different payment mechanism, and you utilize then the record on the blockchain. But as far as diamonds, for example, again, we use your GIA certified diamond suppliers only.
It's a commodity. Diamonds is easy.
Yeah, diamonds are easy. Art, very difficult. So you go to multi-layers of, to give you an example how difficult, we have turned down almost $1 billion in art in the last 2 years that has been offered to us for the portfolio.
Really?
Turned it down because we weren't confident enough in the history of ownership, in the chain, and in, what is it, when is it? I mean, you can have expert opinions that conflict all the time in the art world.
My favorite movie I watched lately that has to do with that is Sour Grapes. Have you seen that movie?
Haven't seen it.
You need to watch that one. That one's really good. It's about how elite wine dealers and wine auctions and how they were counterfeits injected into the system a few years ago, and the whole story of where they came from and how it. Yeah,
that's a very, very strongly rising asset class, right? Wine and spirits in general, and we've dipped into that a little bit. We have some wine and champagne houses we're working with, and then we actually Idoneus just acquired the most valuable whiskey in the world. It's a $3 million set. It's a partnership with Craft Irish Whiskey Company and a Fabergé. It comes with a Fabergé egg, one of a kind, a Fabergé watch, and this whiskey, which there's only 7 bottles of in the world. And it's a $3 million set, right? And it's rising in value. I mean, I think last sold for $3.5 million right after that.
So Jarrett, how do you meet your next customer?
Well, they're kind of coming to us now, right? Because it's a very turbulent environment out there in the world. All these things that are going on in the world cause these high net worth individuals to look for new solutions to move value. But we have things, we get invited to wealth summits and family office summits, and we have very strong networks. Over that last couple of decades with Obsidian, we have very, very strong networks that bring us these assets one at a time, one family at a time. Most of it's by referral.
How do they know if one of their assets is ready for Idoneus or Obsidian? How do they know, like, well, I've got all these assets over here, but these couple over here are like perfect for it?
We focus mostly, I'd say, on passion assets, right? So art, very unique, special real estate.
So high intrinsic value.
High intrinsic value, emotional assets, as I describe them. So if they're looking, in their stable of assets, not that we don't take commercial office buildings, right? Mm-hmm. But there are a lot of avenues to divest of those, much less to divest of their estate in the Eastern Caribbean or that fine piece of art that's been in the family for 100 years. Assets that are a little bit more unique are what they would bring to us. Something more mainstream, there's 1,000 brokers that can assist them with those, It
sounds to me like you must have a really interesting social media feed that people just want to look at it.
It's funny, we should. But the truth is we spent 2 decades in a very, very discreet business where we never talked about what we did. So we always joke about it. we feel like we're pretty good at what we do, but we're very bad at telling the world about it because we spent 20 years not, right? These are very discrete transactions. I couldn't go out and say, hey, I'm at this palace.
You're right.
So it's very foreign to me to be talking about it at all. But we're trying to get better. Actually, we just met last week with a group that is incredible in the social media side, and they love what we do, and they're amazing at what they do.
Yeah.
And they've actually just offered to create a really strong push in following that sector. So stay tuned. Over the next 12 months, I think you'll see that our social media will catch up with our abilities.
That's good, because I did spend some time on your site, and I saw that you have a public and a private marketplace. What are the differences? How do people access?
So the private portfolio is for asset owners who do not want to be on the market publicly, which most of my clients at Obsidian, for example, never wanted to be on the market publicly. That's another benefit. They just wanted to very quietly, discreetly exchange their asset. They don't want people walking through their home or through their yacht, or even knowing that their yacht or their home or their art is for sale. So the private portfolio gives them a lot more, obviously, discretion and privacy. Only financially qualified individuals that are highly financially qualified can even enter and have access to the private portfolio. Their assets from, several million to a few $100 million for an individual asset on the private portfolio right now. And so there's no reason for someone who's looking for a $50,000 item to be viewing a $300 million item, right? For example. Yeah. So we keep that very, very tight, require financial confirmation and a lot of detailed information to give people access to that. And that gives those asset owners a lot of comfort that they're not being viewed by the whole public. You're not burning the asset. But a lot of times people think that exposure is critically important to selling an asset. I've always believed that overexposure is the enemy of value when it comes to these types of assets.
Right.
And you'll see it. I see assets that go to auction at some of the big auction houses.
I mean, there's value in the privacy of the asset.
If they don't sell in a public effort, you've hurt the value. And sometimes you can't go back to market for 4, 5, 6, 8 years.
You're 100% correct.
So we try to keep those very discrete assets private.
Well, let's change gears a little bit. So
sure.
Obviously your business model is foundational in terms of how assets are swapped, but the way you're doing is very innovative. Let's talk a little bit about the technology you're using. So you're using a cryptocurrency based off of Ethereum. You realize that this was the right mechanism for being able to trade these assets and efficiently move them, right? How do you go about minting your own coin?
Well, for that, I should be bringing on one of my other partners who's much more on the technology side. I'm very asset-centered in my whole focus. But what I can tell you is, for us, there are many different ways to mint your own token. And we, again, wanted to have a very, very high level of confidence when we brought the token to market. So we went to Switzerland. We went to FINMA, which is the financial regulatory body in Switzerland that oversees all insurance companies, banks, cryptocurrency companies, everything financial. And we had to share our detailed business model with them.
Okay.
Right? And what you look to receive is a no-action letter from FINMA. And in that process, they're looking at every bit of the business model. And if something doesn't make sense, they're going to ask you. If something doesn't make sense, they're going to ask you to change it. And in that process, they look at the size of the market you serve, the experience you have in that marketplace, which we have a vast amount of experience with our team. They look at the value that you provide. Does the token provide any value? Is it even necessary? I mean, this is why less than 4% of the cryptocurrencies in the world have a no-action letter from FINMA in Switzerland, because it's very hard. It's very hard to go through that process. People just like to create the token. And we went through that process, and we pre-minted all 1 billion IDON. So it's not being created any longer. There's no more IDON.
Amount.
There will never be another IDON minted. It's pre-minted, and then, according to the business model, which was submitted to FINMA as well, you have a vast majority set aside for asset acquisition, and then you have some marketing, and you have partners, et cetera. But it's technically very easy. Technically, you could mint a token in a day.
Sure, like I could probably Google it. And
you could probably do it. I couldn't do it, but you could probably do it.
But yours has more value because you, like you said, you've got that no action letter. It's actually, there's a marketplace where you can use it to buy and trade goods.
There's real value and real utility.
There's utility, right?
Right? There's real utility. People can trade our currency for something of value. People are trading multi-million-dollar assets for IDON. So it's really the barter trade token on the blockchain, the modern day barter trade token, with the nice ability that it has, that as we do our job, it can rise, right? Doesn't mean it's going to skyrocket. We don't, we're a very conservative model, but we think over time we can add more value.
Absolutely. Well, the more it's transacted, it should have more value.
We certainly hope so.
That's what we're betting on.
That's right. That's right.
So what's the next thing that you are doing to build this business? How are you looking to grow it?
We're really focused on corporate partnerships right now. So assets, goods, and services are where the luxury marketplace focuses. For us right now, instead of just individual transactions, to build the level of utility we want and the growth that we need, we're having corporate partnerships come into play where we can bring hundreds of millions of dollars in assets, goods, and services to the platform at one time.
Yeah.
Right? You can imagine if it's one asset at a time, $5 million per asset, it would take a long time to reach $100 billion.
Yeah.
Right? But we can do it with corporate alliances. So we're beginning to have some discussions with already some incredible companies, but we have some very, very big companies that I won't announce yet, but that everyone in the world knows that we're working to collaborate and create some partnerships with. I have some meetings later this month in Europe with some of the biggest brands in luxury on the planet. In the financial and accounting sector, we have a partnership we're working on the same way.
Wow, so you're saying that potentially these extremely elite exclusive brands could potentially sell brand new items in your marketplace.
I mean, they already are. We just signed with Mazzanti, which is a competitor to Koenigsegg and Bugatti. They create hypercars that are from €1.3 million to over €2.5 million. They just brought their entire line to the Idoneus platform. We just signed and announced that PR just a few weeks ago, and I'm gonna meet them in Dubai coming up shortly for an event that we're doing. So as you start to bring in hypercars, then you start to bring in brand new yachts, which we already have with Majesty Yachts and more coming. And then you look at retail products. Imagine the luxury retail brands coming, because for them, we can help them move hundreds of millions of dollars in product at full value that they may not currently be moving in their traditional cash market. It doesn't take away from the traditional cash business. It just adds a whole new revenue stream for them.
Absolutely.
Where they can take, doesn't matter if it's Chanel or Chopard or whatever it might be, they can trade their goods at full value for IDON, then trade IDON for real estate, for yachts, for diamonds, right? Which
That's
they can't
right.
do currently.
Well, I mean, one of my friends has, he buys supercars. Every now and then he buys a hypercar. And many times that process is many years in the making.
Mm-hmm.
He's putting deposits down that are significant amounts of money,
Right.
maybe 3 years ahead of time.
Right.
And so what typically happens is, God bless him, but he usually receives the asset. He'll drive it for a couple of months, enjoy having it, and then he'll flip it. At today's value, it'll be worth 20% more today than when he bought it, because now some sheik or somebody, in some other part of the world, they don't want to wait. They want it now. And money doesn't really matter to those people. And it's just like they just want it now. Like, it's available now. This is just yours model. I want it now. There's none available except for this one guy who's got one. And
we've seen that with Obsidian, now with Idoneus. That's the reason I started the trading firm originally way back then. High net worth guys and men and women don't want to wait. And when they're done with an asset, they're done. I mean, it's amazing. They'll take a multi-million-dollar asset that most people would just love to have. They'll say, look, I'm done with it, JP. Just trade it. Call me and tell me what he's trading for, but I'm done.
That's incredible.
So when they want to move in and out swiftly. And that's what caught my attention with blockchain technology. Blockchain technology, and I'm not a technology guy, right? I'm an asset guy. But blockchain technology allows the transaction to be so smooth and so quick and so easy. The key is the trustless technology and the ability to add, in our world, assets into that so it creates trust, another level of trust, right? So people know that there's a real utility. I think the blockchain for the sake of blockchain or crypto for the sake of crypto makes no sense to me. I see cryptocurrencies all the time. I see all kinds of use of blockchain technology. I think there's a lot of abuse of every technology out there, right? But there are some things that it makes a lot of sense for. And I think anything that's important, like accounting, I think we're going to see every major accounting firm in the world operating on blockchain technology, right? Because it's going to, imagine that will impact the stock market.
They have to.
If we know that everybody's reporting is immutable, can't be changed, Enron never would have occurred, right?
You're 100% correct. And all the computing power there is to handle it.
I love those applications where there's a real benefit for it.
And so you've got this organization. So now, how many transactions are you looking to do over the next, let's say, 5 years? Like, what would be your goal?
I don't think I can give you a number of transactions. I'd say over the next 5 years, again, we're focused on utility. Over the next 5 years, we should build a $25 billion portfolio. I mean, there's $25 billion in assets, goods, and services available to be purchased with IDON. And I think that's our whole focus. If we do that, the rest will take care of itself. I'm not counting transactions. We're counting utility, and to really build out and have a global footprint with IDON, right? In the markets where we can operate. There are many markets where we don't operate because as a Swiss company, the KYC AML won't allow.
Right.
And that's okay too, right? It gives people more confidence.
So what are your personal goals? Like, I mean, it sounds like you've really got something that's special here and it's going to be very successful. What are your personal goals?
I think my personal goal would be, as far as the business goes, is to take the company as far as I can take the company. Being an entrepreneur, being I'm a striker, if you will, right? So I'm not a long-term office admin guy. So when the company reaches that level, there'll be a different position, probably a different CEO to run Idoneus when Idoneus is
you could be a product
at that
tester.
scale. Yeah, let me be a product tester. We'll test the Mazzantis, we'll test the aircraft, the yachts. No, I think I'll always stay on the tip of the spear, no matter what. I would love, if Idoneus has 12 divisions in the future, I wouldn't mind being the head of specifically just the physical asset trading division, right? I'm not attached to the title, but I'd like to push the business as far as we can in the next 5 to 6 years, which I think is a very long way. I think we can build the dominating luxury economy in the blockchain realm. And then for me, I mean, it's, I'll be 50. I just turned 47 a week or two ago. I'll be 52, and I think there's a whole other chapter. And for us, this will hopefully be the vehicle that allows us to do some of the things we really want to do. Right?
Like what?
I grew up, like I told you, in a little small town, and I grew up in a very, humble, very basic way. Mm-hmm. And some people were there to help me when I was young along the way, and we try to be there to help as many people as we can. But with a model like this, because if you imagine who our clients are, right? Our clients are the most successful people in the world, and they're very giving people. And we have a model that helps them build a lot of value and helps them move a lot of value. So we can probably find some ways to extract. We're working on that model right now, but to extract from the company, even from clients who want to contribute, some very significant value that we can deploy into each of these markets where we do business. Our vision is to make a very positive impact for the local community in every place where Idoneus does business. And that'll be different. That'll look different in every place. Maybe it's water, maybe it's food, maybe it's education, maybe it's construction of homes that need to be built. We've done all those things on an individual basis, but I'd like to create a foundation that focuses solely on that, and then leverage this experience and the success that we have and these great clients that we have, and go out and do some really fun stuff in the next decade beyond that. Which is, we can create $1 billion foundation at Idoneus today with IDON, and we can build on that and give back in ways that I never thought imaginable. When I was an 11-year-old growing up in Washington State.
It's incredible what you've created. It's going to be really exciting to watch where you take this. Where can people follow you, keep up with the success of Idoneus and IDON, the currency? Where can people keep track of that?
Sure. I think, thank you, by the way. I think the easiest thing to do would be to go to idoneus.io, or just simply Google Idoneus, IDONEUS. And Idoneus.io, you can follow, all of our social media links are there. You can follow the portfolio as you grow the asset portfolio, and you'll get news and recent articles and updates that are coming out. But you'll start to see a lot more news about Idoneus as we get some partners in that space. But that's probably the easiest way today.
Well, we're definitely going to want to follow you, and looking forward to doing that, and appreciate you coming on the show today.
I really appreciate you having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can follow us in any of our episodes at thelawofrelevancy.com and anywhere where podcasts are found. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next time.